So let's go ahead and do a little exercise, because I think it's extremely important that we sort of frame everything occurring in the right way. And to preface that, it's all bad. But when you're thinking about it and talking about it, you need to make that understood in some other way. So, I'm going to ask about a series of policies. I'm going to ask a series of questions about those policies. And then I want you to consider how those things help you, how they help us, right? So, let's start. Putting blanket 25% tariffs on all imports from our two biggest trading partners, and an additional 10% on our third largest trading partner. How does that help you? Because those prices will rise directly. The way a tariff works is that as a good comes into the country, it gets tariffed. And the person who pays the tariff is the organization that is doing the importing. So if we have a tariff on someone, when we import something from that place, the person importing it has to pay that percentage on top of what the price was. So 25% tariff means that price goes up 25%. So ask yourself, how do prices going up by that help you? When people lose their jobs because businesses can't absorb that margin, how does that help you? When we lose all of the soft power we had in the world, how does that help you? When our closest allies can't trust us to keep our word for trade agreements that we signed, how does that help you? When we want to lay off more than 10% of the federal government, put at the very least hundreds of thousands of people out of the job, how does that help you? How does those people being on unemployment help you? How does those people now entering the job market help you? That job market then gets crowded, and the price of labor, which would be what we get paid, goes down because there are now more people fighting for those jobs, and so they can offer less and people will accept it. So how does that help you? When we shutter the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the CFPB, the governmental arm that is designed to look out for the rights of the little people, of you and me, and almost all the people we know, when they look out for companies that exploit us and take advantage because they're larger, because they have more lawyers and more money, and when we take that department and we effectively shutter it, so it can't do any more oversight, so it can't protect us, an organization that's returned more than $20 billion to American consumers, how does that help you? When we talk about cutting down thousands of acres of trees in our national parks, how does that help you? When we stop issuing research grants and we can't make advances into medicine or science that we've been making for decades, things that put us at the top of the heap when it comes to innovation on a global scale, how does that help you? How does it help any of us? When those scientists then get poached by other countries, how does that help you? When we sit down the president of a war-torn country in our Oval Office, and when the president and vice president berate that man, a man who was so brave that when the invasion of his country occurred almost 3 years ago, and he was asked if he needed help escaping, if he needed evacuation, he said, "No, I need ammunition." A man who through sheer fucking force of will has kept his country going. through force of personality, when he comes to us to be able to position himself to save the lives of his country, and our president and vice president decide to berate him for not being gracious enough, like it's some sort of fucking mob bullshit, how does that help you? Keep in mind, we sent comparatively little money, and most of what we did send was military aid, and in the forms of military aid that we sent, it was largely equipment that we don't use because it is outdated. So things that we were either paying to store or that we would have had to have paid to maintain or destroy. So when we give that away, and what we get for it is goddamn near total collapse of one of our biggest geopolitical rivals in Russia, how does stopping that help you? And you have to ask yourself then, if these things are not helping you, who are they helping? How does anyone benefit from these things? If when we go against one of our closest allies, an ally who we agreed to protect if they gave up their nukes, if we, instead of siding with them, sidle up to Russia and vote with them at the UN, if we decide to give Putin everything he wants, if we choose to lift sanctions on Russia for the war they started by invading another sovereign country, how does that help you? In what world is any of this helping you? Point to a thing that was done that has helped you. How does gutting our federal government help you? How does gutting Social Security staff help you and closing offices? How do these things help you? How does cutting taxes for the wealthiest people in this country help you? What the fuck are we even doing here? If all of this can be done for the benefit of someone else, but not for you, keep in mind, in this system that we inhabit, that was chosen for us by the people who came before us, that we choose to continue to prop up, if all the billionaires blinked out of existence, society would go on. If everyone else blinked out of existence, it wouldn't. So why should all of that benefit go to them? To the people who already have more than they could ever spend in a lifetime? More wealth than is fathomable? Ask yourself that question. And ask who benefits from all of this bullshit. Well, we know who benefits from tariffs. It's not the US, because what we're doing is we're burning our standing on the global stage. All the high ground we've had, all the goodwill we have, fucking gone. But you know who benefits? Our adversaries. You know who else benefits? The wealthy, who have more than enough money and can ride this out, and when prices get low enough, they can just buy up stock in everything, so that when it eventually rises, they become even wealthier. And that's assuming it rises, but even if it doesn't, now they just own more companies by percentage of stock, right? Now they have more control over those companies. That's what the wealthy get. And if it never goes back up, they're still fine. But you're not. Your 401k isn't. Your pension isn't. Your IRA isn't. Those things are still down. It's apparent that what's being done does not help us. And so why should we be on board with it? In what world is it acceptable for us to be treated as an afterthought and lied to and just be okay with it? But it's not enough to point out how absolutely fucked this is. That's insufficient. What we also need to point out is that there is a better way for all of these fucking things. That there is a better way to handle whatever concerns you might have than what we're currently doing, because what we're doing is ham-fisted and it's wrong. It's an idiot's idea of a smart plan, and it's a weak man's idea of strong actions. That's what this is. That's what this environment is. That's what these plans are. They are things that, if you're not paying attention, look strong. But when you look harder, they don't. So, let's talk about the alternatives to what we're doing. Let's talk about what we could be doing differently. So first, the ostensive idea behind the tariffs, the lie behind the tariffs, is fentanyl. Now, we know that's not the actual reason for the tariffs, and you can make an argument for what the actual reason for the tariffs is, but it's sure as fuck not fentanyl. It is most likely an ego thing for Trump, who wants to cement some sort of legacy and have some sort of land grab like his buddy Putin. And so what he wants to do is he wants to weaken our neighbors so that they're more amenable to us. And as sick and fucked up as that is, that might not be the only reason. There could be another reason. There could be a bunch of other reasons. Hell, this bullshit stock market dip could just be a reason for someone to buy, and then he says, oh, tariffs are off, and the market goes back up, and now a lot of people make a lot of money. Well, a few people make a lot of money. So, what if you wanted trade relations to be different with Canada and Mexico? Well, there are ways to do that with agreements, right? You don't have to universally tariff. You could provide incentives internally in the US to doing things here. You could domestically stimulate economic sectors you want it to be bigger. If you want more factories, then you give more tax breaks for factories. That's what you do. You don't make it harder to get items from outside of the country, because then what happens is that now everyone just suffers. You suffer. You'll pay more for all of this. And so yeah, do that. Do any sort of negotiating. Instead of this bullshit where you call tariffs and then provide no way out for anyone to sort of do anything about it, and then raise them anyway. Because why the fuck not, right? If you got power, why not be a fucking raging asshole about it? Because everyone loves those, right? Everyone loves a good bully. America routinely watches movies and goes, yeah, I want to be that jackass from the Cobra Kai gym instead of Daniel, working with Mr. Miyagi. I want to be the asshole in this situation. That's who we are right now. If you think government is inefficient, if you think that what they're doing could be done better or for cheaper, fine. That's a thing you're allowed to have an opinion on. But then what you should do is you should want to audit. Use the inspectors general. Their job is to audit. Because they, one, understand the thing they're auditing. Imagine you walk into a fucking company you know nothing about today, and you want to look at their books and go, yeah, this is what I think is important and what's not important, and this is who I think is important and who I think is not important. For an industry you know nothing about, how does that fucking work? How's that efficient in any way? No. So if there's waste, or if there's fraud, or if there's abuse, you can find that with an audit. But if you're saying, oh, government doesn't work fast enough, so by trimming it, it'll be leaner and there'll be less bureaucracy and everything will go better. No, it fucking won't. You've lived this. What the fuck happens when your work starts slashing people and you're still there? Do you get shit done quicker? Does it get done better when less people are doing it? Does that make any fucking sense to you? No. Because your lived experience tells you that that is different than what you're being told it is. I would argue, if you want to make government more efficient, you would need more people. Government could be more responsive with more people. Because then the workload is spread out. You can do a lot more with 2 people than you can with 1. But if you want government to be responsive, you need to pass laws about it. We need to change the way the whole system works. And you don't fucking do that by burning it down. That's just wrong. It's not going to work. If you want peace for Ukraine, if you want peace in Europe, then instead of giving the asshole who invaded everything he wants for nothing in exchange, maybe you say, hey, we're the United States of America. We have all of the fucking leverage in goddamn near every international relationship we have, whether it's friendly or adversarial, and increasingly adversarial, unfortunately. So, if you want to say, stop Putin and maybe not reward land grabs in Europe, set a no-fly zone up over Ukraine. You think Putin's going to fucking do anything about it? Of course not. He's a coward, and his army couldn't do shit either. They couldn't take Ukraine. They will not take the greatest fighting force in the history of the world. We could push them back to the borders by the end of the month. We could do that. And the issue is, instead, we're choosing to give up on an ally, to give up on a democracy in favor of a dictatorship. How the fuck is that okay? Why are we siding with a bully there too? Well, when you think about it, it's pretty fucking clear, isn't it? A lot of people will say, oh, Trump is owned by Putin. But I don't think that's it. Right? That wouldn't make sense, because when you think about it, there's goddamn near nothing. There's goddamn near no amount of damaging material you could have on Trump that would get his people to abandon him at this point. Unless it hurts his people. It's the only thing. So it's probably not that. If you want to know what it is, it's that he admires the strong man. He admires the mob boss. And he wants to be that. And so, he cozies up to them. He wants a world where strong leaders answer to no one. Where they steal wealth from their people. And they provide edicts from on high that people have to follow or end up dead. That's what he wants more than anything. And throughout his entire life, he wants that, and he wants adulation. He wants people to love him or fear him. It doesn't matter which. He'll take either. And it's so fucked up to watch this happen, to see every bit of these plays before they happen, and to understand exactly why they're coming. What's even more fucked up is to see everyone around him being unwilling to do anything about it. He has surrounded himself with sycophants and yes men. People who either are so slavishly devoted to him that they'll write children's books about him, or people who are so fucking opportunistic that they'll use him to ride him to where they need to go or where they want to go. That's who's around him. It's not people who give a shit about you or me. It's not people who give a fuck about America. It's people who care about themselves. Why should we be subject to rules that they are not subject to? Why should we exist in a system where all the power is held by a handful of people, and all we can do about it is hope? There needs to be more. We need to do more. We need to be more. And it can't just be that we oppose Trump. We have to. To be clear, we have to oppose him. But more than that, we need to provide an alternate vision for what should be, for who we should be as a country, for who we should be as a people, for what we actually fucking value. And it should be more than just our own fucking wallets on a day in, day out basis. If we lived in a fucking functional country, a country that cared more, you wouldn't have to worry about going out to protest because you would lose your job. You wouldn't have to worry about getting sick and losing your health insurance or your job. You wouldn't have to spend every fucking waking hour afraid of the consequences of not having money. We could provide a robust social safety net for people, so that when a bad thing happens to you, when the president fucks up the economy and you lose your job for it, when the president decides he doesn't want the government to work and you lose your job for it, but there's something there to help you while you look for what you're going to do to figure this out and move forward. And all of that are things we can absolutely do. Don't fucking forget, we are the dominant economy in the world. We're the most powerful country this world has ever seen. There's no comparison between us and anything else. There's not a fucking thing we could not do if we wanted to. And instead, we stay divided. And we let people like Trump and like Elon divide us from each other. Because it keeps us looking next to us instead of at them. The people who take advantage of this system, who rig it with money and with influence and with speech that is more equal than yours. And make it make sense. What have they done to warrant any of that? It's so frustrating to watch all of this and to understand that everything that's being done is not being done for you. It is being done for people who are selfish, who only want what is best for themselves and couldn't give a fuck about what works for you or for people who are in trouble or people who need help. Are we so lacking in compassion that we can't give a single fuck about people around the world or even in our own country? In what world does America benefit when we stop feeding people in starving countries, when we stop providing medication to eradicate diseases? All that goodwill that we build up, every bit of that aid, when a child doesn't starve because of aid we provide, that provides goodwill to us that is goddamn near immeasurable. And we ceded that for nothing. And you know who'll fill that void? China will fill that void. And so our position on the world stage suffers. And if all you care about is American power, that should piss you off. But if you actually care about people living or dying who aren't you, who you don't know, who you will never know, but if you care about the fact that for almost nothing of our budget, we can save millions and millions of lives, then what's happening now has to piss you off. I think it's apparent that we can do better. We can do more. But we have to stop fighting ourselves. And that's really difficult because a lot of people have succumbed to these depictions of strong men, of people who claim to be strong because they can be loud. Because when someone disagrees with them, they shout them down. But if you watched that Oval Office fuck up with Zelensky, Trump, Vance, and the empty skin suit that used to be Marco Rubio, you know who looked weak in that meeting. It wasn't the man who's been fighting for his country for years. It wasn't the man who chose to stay instead of leave. It was the men who have only ever fought for themselves. It was the men who couldn't help but to yell at a person for correcting them about something so fundamental to the conflict. Just the mere idea that, hey, we're willing to give you a lot, but all we want is a security guarantee, because a ceasefire means nothing if there's no consequence for breaking it. And he's broken them before. And that was a bridge too fucking far. But you'll find that that narrative on the right has already spun out of control. People claiming this is some sort of win, as if it made the world think America was stronger or better. When all the world thinks of us is less every single fucking day because of who we elected to be there. In our White House. In our Congress. So, if you want to break through, the only way you break through is not with these arguments about what's right or what's wrong. Because Trump has already claimed a monopoly on what's right and wrong with his followers. What he says is what will go. So the only thing you can do is look at any given policy and say, hey, did that help you? How did that help you? What benefit did you get from that action? Do you have more money now? Are you safer? Are you healthier? Are you happier? Or is this just about owning the libs? Because that's a value you can't take to the fucking bank. That's a benefit you can't trade for shit. So, if it's purely self-interest, you go about it that way. But again, that also requires that on the left, we have a coherent vision and an idea about what we stand for and what we should stand for and what we can do for people. It was JFK who said, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. Well, we've apparently given that the fuck up. So now, it's time that we tell people what their country can do for them. What we could spend money on, what we could give people, what our vision of the world could be. And say, hey, that didn't help you, but this would have. And lately, it's all I can think about, is finding that balance, is striking that chord, so that we understand, so that we can rationalize and understand how to try and bring this country back from the cliff we are barreling towards. The problem is that Democrats and the left are a big tent, and on the right, it's a small tent. You love Donald Trump, congrats, you're in. Everything else can be hand-waved. So what the left needs is vision and clarity and consensus, and it needs to be not just well-written, well-thought-out policy, but it needs to also resonate with people. You can have a 12-page document of how you'll make it work, but what you need to do is have a one-sentence line about what it is, what it does, and why it's good. Something that feels right to say. What I want to do is I want to take Project 2025, because it is such a heavy blueprint for what they're currently doing. And I want to use that as the skeleton to make an alternative. Because what it's going to do is it's going to inform you, one, of what it is they intend to do and what they claim the problem is and how they want to spin that to the American people. It sets the stage to provide the counter argument to what they're saying. To look at it and say, hey, here's what they're doing to HHS. Here's what they're doing to the USDA. Here's what they're doing to the Department of Transportation. So this is the state it will be in. And here's what I think we should do instead. Here's what they're fucking up. Here's where there's wrong. Here's where they're wrong. Because say what you want, but the left can plan better. Experts tend to be over there because that's where truth is. That's where knowledge is. So why the fuck can we not build a better mousetrap when we're looking at the shitty remnants of the one the right built? So let's look at Project 2025 and let's change that shit into Progress 2029. Let's find a way to do better. Let's make something better. And I'll put my fucking money where my mouth is, and that's what I'm going to start to do. It might be a while before that bears fruit. But I want to start putting out videos about that, taking each section, breaking down what they're doing, and then proposing an alternative, putting together a document, putting together a vision to get people excited, to get people to understand that we can do more than burn everything down. We can build everything up. There is no country with the ability to do that more than us. So why should we be flinging shit when we could be redefining the modern age? We could be a fucking beacon for everyone to follow. No one has the capability we do to take what is and change it into what could be. It's about picking up where the systems we have leave off. It's about building on what we have. And what doesn't work, we redesign. Because we can make a better thing than what we made 70 years ago. But it requires making something instead of just taking it away. If you find yourself as disgusted with the last week as I have been, start thinking about what you want to see in the world, what you want to be there, what you want to be better. Start thinking about how we can make that happen. Because when we say what they're doing is wrong, we need to be able to say, and here's what would be right. So, as we watch everything around us fumble to utter shit, we're going to keep fighting. I'm going to keep fighting. I don't care if I'm told that illegal protests will land me in jail. The fuck is an illegal protest? January 6th? That was fine, so line should be pretty fucking hard to hit, right? That bar should be on the fucking floor. We will not be silenced. I will not be silenced, and you shouldn't be either. So, take care of yourself, take care of other people, and I'll see you next week.